Good Tuesday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. Grab some extra water if you're heading outside today. We're in for another dangerously hot day across Minnesota. Rain early this morning didn't do much to cool us down, as the heat index is now soaring once again today near 100 degrees. We'll check in with the weather team in just a little bit. New video today from northern Minnesota showing off the power of last night's storms. This is from Mark Hendrickson. It shows downtown Crosby lighting up from all the lightning. In those flashes, you can see the incredible amount of rain and wind this storm brought with it. And those storms causing some serious damage across the Crosby-Emily area. You can see trees snapped and some boats and docks tossed. Some people we talked with say they had to cut their way out of their driveways because so many trees fell. Thankfully, there are no reports of any injuries so far. Just in this afternoon, the U.S. Attorney's Office announcing charges against 25 people in what they're calling two major Minnesota-based drug trafficking organizations. The charges are against members of two gangs, the Family Mob and the G Block. U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen says these two gangs operated open-air drug markets in Minneapolis and helped push a rise in violent crime across the city.
And so I'm not going to stand here and pretend to tell you that we are solving Minnesota's fentanyl problem. But what I can tell you is that if you're trafficking in fentanyl, we are going to get you, we are going to find you, and we are going to take you down. And if you want to lose your freedom, that's a very, very simple recipe for losing your freedom.
According to the FBI, 12 people connected to these charges were arrested just today. Others are already in state custody. The U.S. Attorney's Office says the charges range from distributing fentanyl and other controlled substances to weapons charges. Ahead of the 4th of July holiday, the Minnesota DNR and other agencies are launching Operation Dry Water, the national campaign aimed at targeting boating under the influence. The goal is to reduce the number of BWI-related boating accidents between July 3rd and July 5th. Law enforcement says the heat could also impact your ability to operate a boat safely.
Creates kind of a perfect storm. Obviously, heat exhaustion is a real thing, and then you add alcohol on there, and then you add the environments of all the activity out on the lake, all the waves. Maybe being in areas that you're not all that familiar with, it definitely increases risks of accidents and things happening out on the water that you typically wouldn't expect.
Developing today, birthright citizenship is here to stay. The Supreme Court rejecting President Donald Trump's executive order declaring that children born in the United States illegally or temporarily are not American citizens. That decision is in line with the long-standing understanding of birthright citizenship. In their ruling, 5 justices said the executive order Trump issued on his first day of his second term was unlawful, falling outside the 14th Amendment. Also coming in from the court, justices upholding state laws banning transgender athletes from participating in women's and girls' sports. The court divided 6-3 ruling against 2 transgender students from West Virginia and Idaho. In the majority opinion, Justice Brett Kavanaugh says the state bans do not violate the 14th Amendment, which requires the law apply evenly to everyone, or Title IX of the Education Amendment, which bars sex discrimination in education. In the slew of rulings the Supreme Court has issued the last 2 days, one focuses on how police can track your phone. At the center of it, geofencing, which law enforcement uses to locate whose cell phones are near the scene of a crime. That has brought up legal challenges about invasion of privacy. For more on the court's decision, here's Kent Erdal.
When arguing before the Supreme Court this spring, the attorney for Okello Chaudhry said the geofence warrant that led to his client's arrest amounted to a digital fishing expedition. And on one hand, the court agrees.
The one determination the majority made today in the opinion written by Justice Kagan is that a geosearch is a search under the definition of a search in the 4th Amendment, even though our location devices will pinpoint us to any point that we are in the globe, that we still have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and that includes the location of where we are.
But University of Minnesota professor Tim Johnson says the case now goes back to the lower court to figure out where to draw the line.
What the lower court will decide now is whether or not throwing that fence out, just fishing for a suspect or a small group of suspects, is considered a reasonable search.
I'm a little surprised, but I'm very happy.
St. Thomas law professor Julie Jonas has studied the use of geofence warrants for years.
It's really pervasive in law enforcement. That's why Google, in large part, wanted them to get warrants, because the amount of requests that they were getting from law enforcement has been growing exponentially.
In the Chaudhry case, Google initially provided a list of 19 anonymous accounts that were in the area of the bank at the time of the crime. The government then asked for more information on 9 of them, and an officer later asked for detailed information on 3 accounts, including Chaudhry's. The lower court will now need to decide how much of that process requires sign-off from a judge.
When the Minnesota Supreme Court looked at this, they said, no, you need to have a separate warrant with a finding of probable cause at each step from the magistrate or judge.
The Minnesota case she's referencing was decided just a few weeks ago and doesn't ban geofence warrants, but she said it does significantly raise the bar to use them. And she says that will remain no matter how far the bar goes up across the country.
We have a federal constitution that covers the entire country, but that really is the floor of what states must do. Some states will find additional protections for their citizens in their state constitution, and that's Minnesota. That's exactly what they did.
The Minnesota case overturned a murder conviction. But in that case, and in this case out of Virginia, the suspects are both still in custody as lower courts figure out whether they will face a new trial and what evidence can still be used. Developing right now, former Timberwolves player Malik Beasley and Ed Davis were charged this week with sports gambling accusations. Specifically, Beasley and Davis had a betting scheme going that included Beasley allegedly getting fewer or more rebounds on purpose to reward bettors that knew what he would be doing. This didn't happen while Beasley was playing for the Wolves, the charges say, but instead during the time he played for Milwaukee 3 years ago in 4 separate games. The feds claim he rigged his performance to reward the bettors to pay off his own gambling debt of millions of dollars. And while this can seem like a small deal as it's just his play in this case, it could have a larger impact on the NBA as a whole. Here's The Athletic's Mike Vorkunov.
When you see documented cases or you see accusations from the federal government that players are doing something for a reason other than just trying to win the game or trying their best while they're on the floor, I think it makes you question what you see, right? It makes you question if what you're seeing is credible and real. And that's the most destructive thing that can happen to professional sports.
Beasley is expected to turn himself in on these charges. That's according to his legal team. He is the 5th player in the NBA to be indicted in charges like this. A surprise arrest late last week in Somalia, one of the top suspects in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal fraud case. Lou breaks down how rare it is for something like this in a country that has no treaties for cooperating with the U.S.
In the trial of Amy Bach, the former executive director of Feeding Our Future, the evidence showed that she controlled the money and decided who else got to take part in the $300 million fraud scheme. The evidence in Bach's trial also showed Abdi Kerm Idle was the key recruiter, an employee of hers who found potential fraud participants, allegedly taught them how to scam, and put their application at the top of Bach's desk in return for a bribe. The problem, Idle was not on trial with Bach. The number 2 defendant was in Mogadishu, Somalia, where he's been since the federal indictments were unsealed in 2022. On Friday, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced Idle was captured there in Somalia's capital city.
Normally, before this, I would have said, or I would have intuited that, the guy's in Somalia, he's in the wind. We're not going to get him.
Retired federal prosecutor David McLaughlin has experience bringing fugitives back to the U.S. to face charges. He says that's made easier when the country where they fled has an extradition treaty with the U.S., a formal agreement to cooperate in those scenarios. Somalia has no such treaty with America.
It's a little bit surprising to me, I guess, just at a gut level, that this level of cooperation appears to be occurring.
According to the U.S. Attorney's Office's press release, the National Intelligence and Security Agency of Somalia, NISA, located and apprehended Idle. NISA has received counterterrorism counterterrorism training from the CIA in the past and is known to work with the U.S., particularly against the terror group al-Shabaab. Idle is actually Ethiopian, according to that country's news outlet, the Reporter Ethiopia, and Somali sources say that plays a role in Somalia working with the U.S. to send him back here in spite of having no extradition treaty.
So I'm heartened that they're cooperating. That's great.
Lou Ragoose, Kare 11 News.
Stick with us. More news and weather's coming up after the break.